Hello everyone, welcome to Module 5. Here we study stratification by race, ethnicity, and gender, chapters 10 and 11. Previously in chapters 8 and 9, we talked about social stratification and social inequality in general. And you remember the definition of social stratification, right? It is the systematic process by which individuals are ranked on the scale of social worth. And you should also remember that there are two opposite stratification systems. On the one hand, we've got the closed stratification system, such as slavery, caste system, estate system. Those are based on your ascribed status as something you do not control, you didn't choose it. So, therefore, your opportunities for social mobility, your opportunities to improve your life chances are very limited. On the other hand, we've got open stratification system, which is based on your achieved social statuses, something you can choose, you can control, such as where you live, what type of car you drive, who your friends are, the level of education you have, which church you go to, etc. So tell me now, your race, your ethnicity, your sex. Did you choose those? Can you control those? Are those your achieved or ascribed statuses? Well, obviously those are your ascribed statuses. You do not control those. So is it fair then to rank people on a scale of social worth based on their race, their ethnicity, or their sex? Is racial, ethnic, or gender inequality fair? No, it is not. But unfortunately, it still does exist, as you will learn in these chapters. So in chapter 10, we are going to talk about the concept of race and ethnicity. It's very, very important that you understand the difference between those two. We're going to talk about minority and majority groups. We're going to talk about prejudice and discrimination, what those are, and where they come from. Is it natural for us to be prejudiced? Is it natural for us to hate people that are different from us? Or is this a learned skill? So nature versus nurture debate again. And our three main sociological perspectives, functionalist view, conflict view, and interactionist view, how they interpret and explain racism. Okay, so let's get started. First, let's make sure we understand the difference between race and ethnicity. What you see here is the official government racial and ethnic classification system. So go ahead and name these categories. The first one is what? White or Caucasian. Next, we have African American or Black. Next, we have Hispanic or Latino. Please do not say Mexican. And the last one, we have Asian. Again, do not use the word Oriental. Now, which of those do you think are races and which are ethnicities? Okay, so this is a race. White is a race. Black is a race. Asian is a race. Hispanic is an ethnicity. Why is that? Well, that's a good question. Actually, general public, mass media, government as well, and social scientists, they do not have a clear understanding how to differentiate. There is a lot of confusion. The 2010 census forms, they got it completely wrong. So I'll do my best. I'll try to, without going into great detail, to explain the difference. So, what is race? What is ethnicity? Basically, race is your physical appearance, physical differences among people. The color of your skin, the shape of your eyes, your facial features, your hair texture. Ethnicity, on the other hand, is your culture, which includes the language you speak, your religion, cultural traditions, common genealogy. So, Americans and Mexicans, racially, they are very similar, actually. Mexicans are a mix of Europeans, Spaniards, and Native Americans. In the United States, that's the majority too. Europeans mixed with local population. So technically, they are not that different, but culturally they are. So that's why we say that Hispanic is an ethnicity, because culturally they are different from the United States. Okay, so here's our system again. White, Black, Hispanic, Asian, and Native Americans. So you got these 6 boxes, 6 choices. Do you think this is a good system? Do you see any weaknesses, any problems with this system? Anything where you could improve the system? Let's take a look at some of the weaknesses of this system. And first of all, I'm going to give you a color test. I'm going to test your vision. So take a close look at these colors, A and B, and tell me what you would call these colors. And let's write down the names of these colors so we don't forget. So A is obviously going to be white. B, I have to say, is black color. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Is A white and B black? Well, no. Now we're going to say that A is black and B is white. Does this make any sense to you? Well, obviously, based on color, we're not going to have a very good system, because that's true. Sometimes you are classified as white, but your skin is darker than that of a non-white person, and vice versa. So you see, weaknesses are inherent in this tradition to classify people based on color. It's not easy to do. Next issue. So look at these 4 choices. You only got 4 choices. White, black, Asian, Hispanic. I'm going to show you a picture of a person, and you'll have to choose from one of these 4. What race is this girl? White, black, Hispanic, Asian, or Native American? Can you tell? Can you tell after seeing her mother? Her mother is obviously white, so is this girl white? But her father is black, so is she black? If you say she's black, how can she be black if her mother is white? If you say she's white, how can she be white if her father is black? There's another problem with this system. Under this system, a child and their parent end up belonging to different races. Does this make sense? No. Next issue. According to our system, these guys are all Hispanics, and this is Brazil's national soccer team. So they are all one ethnic group, they are all Hispanics. Well, the definition of an ethnic group would be people who are related by blood, by religion, by genealogy, common ancestry, same language. Are they all related by blood? Are they all cousins? No, I don't think so. we see different races there. Are they the same religion? Do they have the same culture? Not necessarily. And by the way, we call them Hispanics, but do they even speak Spanish? Nope. They speak Portuguese in Brazil. Does this make sense to call them Hispanics? Nope. Finally, if somebody like Dr. K comes to this country, what are you going to call me? Which race am I? Well, I'm going to be white. I'm a white male. That's the only box I can check. Well, because I'm going to choose that box, that will mean that I'm a member of the majority group. Automatically, I'm placed in this powerful, dominant majority group in the United States. Is this right? Am I really a member of the dominant majority in this country? So imagine I come to this country in 2004, and I pick up the phone, and I call different employers, and I tell them, hello, I come from Ukraine. I need your help. I am white. Give me a good job. You think they're going to give me a good job just because I'm white? Well, no. As a matter of fact, when I came here, I started applying for jobs, sent out like 50 applications. I didn't get a single interview. They looked at my resume, so that I came from a foreign country. They didn't care to even invite me for an interview. So obviously I am not a member of the majority group. I am a minority. And yet I'm not considered a minority. I'm not eligible for any affirmative action programs. Somehow I'm just seen as a white male, part of the majority group, and I do not add to diversity in this country in any way. I'm just part of the majority. So that doesn't make any sense either. What kind of systems do other countries use? This is what they have in the UK. A much more comprehensive system, a lot more choices. Under this system, I would check other white background. So I would be considered a minority member. That girl could check mixed background. This system seems to be much better. Why do we not have a system like this? To answer this question, we're going to do a little activity. So I want you to take a minute and imagine a typical Scottish person, a typical German person, a typical Mexican person, and a typical American person. Or stereotypical, I should say. When we think about a stereotypical Scottish person, you probably picture this Jimmy hat, a bagpipe, kilt, and when you think about typical Scottish food, you would probably picture like haggis, which is sheep's stomach. Then when you picture a stereotypical German person, probably beer in one hand and some kind of sausage in the other hand. Lederhosen. Okay, so typical or stereotypical German person, stereotypical Mexican person, large sombrero, mustache, poncho and guitar. And they're going to probably eat tacos. Again, stereotypical food. And then when you think about stereotypical Americans, so what is he going to wear? A t-shirt and a pair of jeans, a cowboy hat, a baseball hat. What is he going to eat? Pizza? Well, that's Italian. Hamburger, that's German. We don't really have one image of what an American looks like. So this could probably explain why we have such a limited system, such limited choices. In the UK, they have British, Scottish, Welsh, and everybody else. In Germany, they have German and everybody else. In France, they have French and everybody else. In Ukraine, they have Ukrainian and everybody else. In America, can we have American and everybody else? No, everybody is American. Do we want to include all possible ethnic backgrounds? Do Americans even remember their ethnic backgrounds? I doubt. Can you think of all of your ethnic backgrounds, all of your ancestors? So that's really why we have such a simplistic, limited system based on just appearance. Do we even need this system? That's a whole different topic. Okay, so once again, racial group. Those are people who are set apart from others by obvious physical differences: skin color, facial features, hair texture, etc. But in reality, there are no pure races. It's not something that makes people genetically different. Our race is actually something that only exists in our minds. Every country, every culture have different definition of race. For example, to me, Native Americans or Hispanics look no different than whites. It's just something, a concept of race is something that has been historically constructed. Did you know that Irish Americans originally in this country, they were not considered white, they were considered black, oddly enough. And then later they were accepted as white people. So it's really something that only exists in our minds. Again, historically in this country, people would try to separate black people from white people by hanging a fine-tooth comb next to the church entrance. And if you wanted to get inside, you had to comb your hair. And if the comb got stuck in your hair, you were not allowed in that church. It's something completely arbitrary, something we imagine. There are no pure races. It's just our imagination. Race is a product of chance, context, and choice factors. Interracial marriages, you don't know what race the baby is going to be. It's just a chance. Somebody's going to look darker and will be classified as African American. Somebody will look lighter and will be classified as white. President Obama, Tiger Woods, Colin Powell's, they had actually a mixture of races in their family. Tiger Woods is Native American, is Asian, is white, and partially black. But we classify him as black because he looks dark to people. It's also a product of context, historical context. When slavery existed, it wasn't that rare for slave owners to have offspring with their slaves. But those children were never considered pure. They were never considered white. They were automatically considered black. So because of that history, we tend to classify people as black just because one of their parents or grandparents is black. So President Obama is half white. His mother is a white woman from Kansas. We classify him as African American because that's been historical tradition. And choice factors. Today you can actually choose more than one race when you fill out the questionnaire. Next, ethnicity. Again, is based on your culture, cultural differences, your language, your religion, your common genealogy. So the picture here, you can see an Orthodox Jewish person would be classified as white race. Culturally, religiously, that person is different from most Americans. So that's called ethnicity. This is just to be aware how racial and ethnic makeup of the United States has been evolving. So, as far as you see, 100% Native Americans. 300 years later, Native Americans are pretty much gone, and the whole country is almost entirely made up of white, non-Hispanic Americans. Today, we have pretty sizable African American, Hispanic, Asian minorities, about 1% Native Americans. And it is expected that the number of minority groups will continue to grow, especially Hispanic minority, and eventually, numerically, white people in this country will no longer be majority. So some are concerned how they are becoming minority and they say they need to take their country back. Well, like I said, race is only something that exists in your mind. It's quite possible that several decades from now, Hispanics are no longer be considered a different culture, different ethnicity. They'll be just considered as white people. Just like Italian Americans are no longer considered as a different ethnicity, or Greek Americans or Irish Americans. They're just considered white. Now, when we talk about minority and majority groups in sociology, we do not mean the number. We mean power, privileges, having more or less control over your own lives. So, for example, in the United States, who belongs to the minority group, men or women? And the answer is women. But there are like 52% women. There are more women in this country. Why are they considered the minority group and men are the majority group? That's because of power. You don't see that many female politicians or CEOs in the US Senate. There's just a handful of females. So you know that somebody belongs to the minority group when they experience unequal treatment, like women earn less than men. Same-sex couples are not allowed to legalize their relationships. You know, segregation, the history of segregation, racism in this country. They have distinguishing cultural characteristics. So Hispanics, Asian Americans, Black Americans, they form their subcultures. Their culture is somewhat different from the mainstream culture. That's involuntary membership. They did not choose to be discriminated against. They demonstrate some solidarity. Women's rights movement, civil rights movement, fish-ins among Native Americans. And in-group marriage means that you can only marry somebody within your minority group. You cannot marry somebody from the majority group. So
until the late 60s. It was illegal in this country for African Americans to marry white Americans. It was against the law. So they could only marry other African Americans. And even though now it is legal, very few Americans actually do have interracial marriages. All right, prejudice and discrimination. This is just a picture to show an example of prejudice. And this is a rally, anti-Semitic rally in Pennsylvania during the Second World War. You probably don't know that anti-Semitism, hatred of Jews, was rampant not only in Europe, but also in America. You see, these people are actually supporting the Nazi Party. A Gallup poll from the 40s revealed that about 70% of Americans said that Jews in Germany deserve that sort of treatment. They deserve to be exterminated. That was their fault. So prejudice is such a widespread and scary phenomenon. Prejudice means that you have a negative attitude toward an entire category of people. Typically, prejudice leads to discrimination. Prejudice is your attitude, your thoughts, whereas discrimination would be your actions. This is what you do. So discrimination would be denial of equal rights and opportunities to individuals or entire groups based on your arbitrary bias. So do you think, if we look at the history of discrimination in the United States, we don't see this anymore? Do you feel that as a nation we're doing much better, we're much more open-minded, we are done with discrimination, with racism, or do you think we still have it? We do still have prejudice, but is it just individual, limited to individual cases, certain individuals, or just prejudice? Or do we have legalized or institutionalized discrimination where it's okay, it's seen acceptable in our culture to discriminate against a certain group of people? Do you think it's limited to just individuals, or do you think it's still institutional? Well, you probably don't notice cases of institutionalized discrimination, but I have to tell you that we still do have institutionalized discrimination where it's considered okay to discriminate against groups of people. Take Arab Americans and Muslim Americans. There is pretty obvious racial profiling. And I also want to give you my personal example of extreme institutionalized discrimination, which I'm sure most Americans are not aware of. What you see here are two passport books. This was my Ukrainian passport. This is my American passport. So when I was a citizen of Ukraine, one time I decided to travel to the United States to do my dissertation research. I was writing about international social work, and I had been to Western European countries by that time. I also had an invitation from a social work agency in Arkansas, so I thought I'd give it a try. I traveled to Kyiv. I went to the US Embassy to apply for American tourist visa.
And boy, let me tell you, that was probably the worst, most horrible, most humiliating experience of my life. I was treated like some scumbag. We had to wait outside for half a day. We were not allowed inside. We were not allowed to have any food with us, any personal belongings, no cell phones, no computers, no cameras, no jackets. Those were somehow security threats. Um, you had to pay a huge fee for visa processing. And considering Ukrainian salaries, that was an equivalent of about $1,000. That's a lot. You also had to collect a stack of paperwork to try and prove that you're not a bad person. That was their condition, that you were considered guilty until proven innocent. Okay, so finally it's my turn. I go to that window, and the consular officer asks me why I want to visit the United States. So I start telling her how I'm a PhD student, I'm doing my research and writing about international social work. And as soon as I start talking to her, I see that she is already crossing my application. So after 1 minute, she interrupts me and says, "Sorry, you failed. Come next year." So that was a little shocking. And I asked her, "Can you explain why? What I did wrong? Can you tell me why you didn't even bother to look at any of those papers that I brought you?" And she says, "I don't need to." She pushes the button, calls the security to have me removed, so I'm not asking any questions. So that's the kind of treatment you receive, this kind of third class person, second class person. If you're not born in one of the Western European countries or the United States. And if you look inside my passport, every page has some kind of visa. British visa, French visa, Belgian visa, Hungarian visas, Croatian visas. This one is actually an American visa, but it's a fiancé visa. My wife had to petition for me so they let me in. Now, this passport is a whole different story. It's nice and clean on the outside, on the inside. No visas of any kind. I don't need any visas. I am free to travel wherever I want and whenever I want. And I'm welcomed with open arms as a US citizen. So that is the difference your photo ID can make for you. And it is sad that a piece of paper like that can define who you are and how other people treat you. So that's my example of institutionalized discrimination. Now, take a look at these words. Do you know what they mean? They all mean ethnic intolerance, some form of ethnic intolerance. And just the fact that we have so many words to describe hatred toward other people is already scary. There are different degrees of ethnic intolerance. The most severe form of ethnic intolerance is genocide. What is genocide? It's physical extermination, murdering people who are different from you. Currently, you can think of examples of genocide in Rwanda and Sudan, but this is not something that is very rare or uncommon for Americans. That's what white Americans did to Native Americans, killed them off, murdered Native Americans. And then later, when Native Americans were given some of their original land under federal treaties, then still white Americans decided, well, we want that land too. And they would forcefully expel Native Americans from their land. You know about Trail of Tears. So slavery definitely had slaves in this country, segregation in the South, assimilation. Assimilation, if it's voluntary assimilation, it's okay, but assimilation by absorption, forced assimilation, is definitely not okay. Again, Native Americans were forced into boarding schools, heads shaved, their clothes taken away. They were not allowed to use their language. They had to assimilate and become just like white Americans. Melting pot means that there is cultural diffusion, cultural exchanges between different ethnic groups, and they end up resembling each other more and more and create a new ethnic group, basically. And amalgamation means intermarriage, assimilation through intermarriage. And pluralism is our goal. Pluralism means that multiple ethnic group, religious group, racial groups can peacefully coexist with one another, can respect one another. So that's our goal. Is it attainable? I hope so, but it has not been really achieved yet. Your extra credit assignment associated with this chapter is doing the social distance survey. And for those of you who plan to do it, who have done it already, you are probably going to discover that most people do have some social distance. They're not willing to accept every race as close relatives by marriage. Do you think that necessarily means that it's a sign of prejudice? Well, I personally believe that to have a little bit of social distance is acceptable. It does not mean that you are a prejudiced person full of stereotypes. When it comes to marriage, there is this rule of racial and ethnic endogamy. We tend to marry people that resemble us as much as possible, including race and ethnicity. So most people naturally, instinctively want to marry somebody who looks just like them. It's interesting that even with Barbie dolls, they make them kind of culturally appropriate for little children. So I guess a Barbie doll would be considered a family member. So parents would buy a doll that is the correct race. So this is just something to think about. Now let's talk about what is natural, what is instinctive. Prejudice and discrimination, is this something that is part of our nature? Or is this a conditioned skill? Hatred, different forms of ethnic intolerance, including genocide. Is that natural reaction? Or is that a learned behavior? Okay, so psychologists tell us that we all have this fight or flight response. When you face something that you perceive as dangerous, your sympathetic nervous system prepares your body to either fight that threat or escape. So your pupils dilate, your heartbeat increases, you start sweating, you're physically ready to either fight or run like hell. So that is a natural, instinctive survival skill. We are born with that. Is it natural for us to be afraid of something that is different, that is new, that is unknown? Again, from psychology, we know that it is true. We are very often afraid of what is unknown to us. That is a survival skill, because what is new could be dangerous. When I came to America, my future wife brought me to her apartment, and there for the first time I met our cat, Seymour. So that's his picture. Does he look scary to you? I never saw anything like that. He has no nose whatsoever. That little hole is serves as his nose, is actually above his eye level, has enormous eyes, looks like an owl. So he looked very scary, evil to me. I thought that the strange animal is going to attack me, it's going to bite me, it's going to scratch me. And I based those conclusions simply on the fact that the cat, this Persian cat, looked so weird. In reality, Seymour is an absolute love bug. He wouldn't hurt a fly. He is very, very affectionate kitty. But I made those completely wrong conclusions based on the fact that he looked very unusual to me. So this is how our fear of the unknown works. However, is it our instinct to necessarily destroy, to kill what is unknown, especially if it's an unknown culture, a stranger, a human being that is different? Is it natural for us to try to kill that human being? And this is false. Actually, we are hardwired against killing other human beings. But because we are biosocial creatures, part of us is social. That's how we acquire the skill to hate and try to exterminate other human beings. Sadly, it's a learned skill. So when we talk about fight or flight response and consider how it works within certain species, we add two more reactions, posture and submission. If it's your own species, you actually don't want to fight them. You don't want to hurt them or kill them, because then your species would disappear. You do not kill one of your kind. So when there is some kind of conflict, like males competing for a female, they posture. Instead of really fighting, they posture. They try to intimidate their opponent, and that's all they need. And because you know that your opponent never intends to kill you, submission is also a viable option. So when it comes to interspecies conflict, in addition to fight or flight response, we have posturing and submission, and those two are more common. So like I said, it's hardwired in our psychology to avoid hurting and killing other human beings. We have a very, very strong aversion to blood. Like medical students will even faint when they see blood. We don't want to kill other humans. This is a learned or conditioned skill. Dave Grossman, who is a military psychologist, wrote a book on killing and why there's so much more violent crime nowadays. He also analyzed different military conflicts throughout human history, starting with ancient Greeks and Romans. And he realized that in most of those battles, the amount of ammunition that was used, the amount of bullets that were used, and the casualties were extremely disproportionate. So let's say 5,000 bullets were fired and only 50 people were killed. So he realized that killing rates, even in the military, historically were extremely low. Despite all their drills, soldiers really did not want to shoot other soldiers. They would prefer to, basically they would purposefully miss. They would fire above their heads, or they would prefer doing some jobs that did not involve shooting at other people. So even soldiers typically avoid killing other human beings. And then the US military started using psychological conditioning techniques to condition soldiers, despite their aversion, to kill other humans. And now in the US military, that rate is about 90%. And so Dave Grossman says that same techniques, same classical conditioning techniques are now used by mass media. And no one even tells you when you're supposed to apply that skill that you learn latently. And so what we see is a lot of violent crimes in America as a result of this conditioning. And another famous example I wanted to use that shows you how hatred is conditioned is this very famous blue eyes versus brown eyes experiment that Iowa elementary school teacher Jane Elliott conducted in the 60s. So she realized that her students, young kids, 8-year-old, 9-year-old kids, were very prejudiced and would say some horrible things about blacks, for example. So she decided to do an experiment where she wanted to show her children that people should not be treated based on the color of their skin. She divided her class into two groups, blue-eyed and brown-eyed people. And since she had blue eyes, originally she said that blue-eyed people are hardworking, smart, very talented individuals, whereas brown eyes are stupid and lazy, just inferior human beings. She would take away some of their privileges, like recess time and no seconds during lunch. And it was frightening how quickly those children became what she told them they were. So blue-eyed people were acting extremely arrogant, whereas brown-eyed people felt kind of depressed. And then she reversed those roles and she said, oops, I actually meant to tell you that brown-eyed people are superior. So children learn a very valuable lesson that the color of your eyes does not define who you are, just like the color of your skin doesn't define who you are, and all those nasty stereotypes that they had were learned from our society, from parents, from peers, from media. So I encourage you to watch this experiment. You go to YouTube and answer your search phrase, class divided, and then watch all 3 episodes. It's very, very interesting, and
this is a fact.
kind of
Blue-eyed people are better than brown-eyed people.
entertaining. If you do watch all 3 episodes, you can review this documentary for extra credit. Okay, so what do our 3 sociological perspectives tell us about racism? Well, the functionalist perspective traditionally tries to persuade us that racism would still be something positive for society that allows us to maintain order in society. Racist ideology. And there are always going to be inequalities in society, so racist ideology serves as good justification for maintaining that inequality. But I think a better explanation would be to look at racism as a dysfunction. So other functionalist theories are saying that racism would clearly be a dysfunction. And it hurts our society. So if we say that people of a certain race are inferior, and we're only going to use them as some unskilled workers or slaves, well, we fail to use their talents. Imagine how many famous people we would not have among African Americans or among Asian Americans if we were a racist society, if we did not allow those African Americans to realize their potential. Next, dysfunction, racism aggravates social problems. So things like poverty, things like unemployment, different crimes and riots would only become worse if we discriminate, if we use racism. You also have to spend money to maintain this division in society, to defend those barriers. And also, if, let's say, Iran says they want to destroy all the Jews, definitely that undermines any diplomatic relations they could have had with Western nations. In the United States alone, there are about 11 million Jewish people. So, of course, the US government is not going to like what the Iranian government is saying. Conflict perspective says that racism is basically a reflection of exploitation. Racism is economically based. It's just a way to take advantage of other people. So slavery clearly was a good example of this exploitation theory. And interactionist perspective explains how we can overcome racism. Contact hypothesis. If you are in some kind of meaningful cooperative situation where you have to work with minorities, you have to interact with those people that you are prejudiced against to solve some complex task. You quickly realize that they're good, hardworking people just like yourself, and that racism goes away. Even though Americans have some prejudice against, let's say, Arab Americans right now, or Jewish Americans. If you have friends, if you have family, you will no longer have any prejudice against those people. So if you have close interactions, you have contacts with minority groups, with people that others are prejudiced against, you will quickly learn that those stereotypes are stupid and they're just people like you and like everybody else. All right. So that was chapter 10.